English 112. Ms. Brewer here for your second weekly lecture video. So this week you guys are going to participate in a discussion forum, and that discussion forum is about the poetry that you read last week. So your discussion forum is about the poetry from week 1. So I would definitely start out doing my discussion forum this week and then move into my journal, because your journal is about this week's poetry. So this week, guys, the first thing you're going to do is participate in this discussion forum. Remember that you are talking about week 1's poems. So what I want you to do, you've already done a journal on it. So now what I want you to do is I want you to pick one of the 2 poems maybe that you talked about in your journal, and you're going to get even more in depth for your initial response for this discussion forum. So if you look at the week 1 discussion forum, it'll ask you to select one poem from week 1 to discuss. You are allowed to select one that you wrote about in your journal. And it's really important that you utilize the poetry discussion responses to create your initial reply. So I'm going to open that up, and I want you to cover all of these things in your initial reply. So when you create your thread, what I would suggest is just put the poem title in the thread that you're going to be analyzing here. And then you can kind of create or construct your response going over this information, talking about the basics, okay? Look at the title. Was it intriguing? After you read the title, did the poem match your expectations? Did you notice anything interesting about structure and form? I don't want you to answer these questions as yes and no. I want you to use these questions as a guide to construct a response, okay? So sometimes you may not use every question, but you want to make sure you're hitting the really important stuff. How did the piece make you feel? Was anything surprising? Talk about mood and tone. Okay, remember that mood is kind of like the feel of the poem, and that tone is like how it comes across. If you can't connect it to another piece of literature, that's fine under connections, but does it remind you of any pop culture, music, movies, TV shows? I'm asking for you to make some connections here. Do you have life experiences that it reminds you of? And is there anything that's similar to these things, or maybe dissimilar to your experiences in life that are surprising to you? And then this so what is super important. Make sure that you are coming up with some sort of a theme statement. And remember that a theme is not a word. It's what the author is saying about society or the world, okay? So what is the poet saying about the world, human beings, society in general, okay? And make sure you write like a 1-sentence theme statement. It is really important that you pull from the poem. And it says it at the very beginning. It says, your response should be 300 to 500 words, and you should quote the poem that you have selected. When you quote the poem, please put a line number in there. If it's a Hughes poem, make sure you put which poem it is. And you should be putting line numbers in parentheses after you quote. So that's really important to remember. So the first thing you're going to do, I would suggest just right off the bat, is go ahead and jump into week 1's discussion forum and write your initial response. Your initial response is due by Thursday night at 11:55 at the latest. After you have submitted your initial response, then you can participate in the replies to your peers. All right, so you have 2 peer replies that are due by Sunday night. Please remember that a peer reply, and please go back to my discussion forum grading if you need to. A peer reply is not evaluative, so you're not saying, I think you did a great job. This was a great post, okay? That's not really what I want you to do. What I want you to do is, I really agree with what you stated here, because, okay, and then add more to what they're saying. So either giving other examples, pulling other quotes from the poem, giving other connections, your own experiences or anecdotes, okay? If you very, very much disagree with someone, you may just want to avoid commenting on that. But if you do want to comment with a disagreeal, make sure that it is done tastefully and respectfully. And you're allowed to disagree, but just if you're feeling like a really passionate response, I want to back off from that. So I would jump in and go ahead and do your poetry forum first, your initial response, then go back and read the week 2's poems. Please remember that you are required to read all of the poems. Even though you're only responding to 1 or 2 of them, you're picking the ones that you like best or that you respond to the most. You can't know if you don't read them all. So make sure that you're reading all of the poems that are assigned every week. You should be able to talk about all of them. And then of course your responses, you're going to pick the ones that stand out the most to you. So you'll go back after you've done your initial reply to your discussion forum. You can go back to the week 2 poetry assignment and go ahead and read and annotate and analyze those poems. All right. And you will, for your journal, choose 2 poems from this week to answer the shorter questions. Okay. Knowing that next week you're going to participate in a discussion forum again, with a more in-depth dive into one of those 2 poems. I've provided you guys with scholarly articles again. So there's 2 Maya Angelou articles. If you choose Maya Angelou's Caged Bird, you don't have to read both of the articles. You can read them both, but you don't have to. And then there's a Mullen and a Jordan article as well. So if you choose those poems, you may want to go ahead and jump in and start reading the articles now to prepare, but you do not have to. You will eventually need to have scholarly articles when you write your analysis paper in 2 weeks or so. And so that's what we're pretty much looking at. You're jumping into this poetry again. Hopefully you enjoyed the week 1's poems. Week 2's poems, I do want to kind of warn or give a little word of warning. They are more current, and the tone is a little more forceful. And Poem About My Rights does address like assault, so that might be a triggering type of a poem. And if you feel like that might be a triggering poem for you, of course, that isn't a reason to skip that particular poem if you feel the need to. So obviously you just wouldn't write about that one. But I do want to let you guys know that I have had a student in the past say that could be a triggering poem. So I want to go ahead and just give you that heads up. So after you've participated in the forum, then go ahead and look at our poems for this week. You want to try to start finding some similarities. So when you read this week's poems, think about last week's poems and are there any connections that you can see theme-wise. Remember, too, that we are reading for the purposes of this course with a lens of looking at social issues. So you want to try to kind of pull those out as you're reading. And that's what you're participating in. For your attendance assignment this week, I would like you to go back to the syllabus and review my late policy. And I want you to just go ahead and summarize the late policy in the attendance assignment. So what is the basic late policy? And then for your major assignments, are there any exceptions? Write about that in the week 2 attendance assignment so I can mark you present. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to address them. Have a great week.